off. All right, so good afternoon, everybody. This is Michael Gummel from Paradigm Technology Consulting. And you have joined our April version of our monthly ISV webinar. And today with us, we have Derek Hicks from PN3. He will be taking you through the PN3 solution. And very excited for Derek to show this to everyone today. I've been working with Derek for a couple of years now, showing this to various clients. And one of the reasons why I am so excited about this solution is it's one of the very few solutions, if not the only solution for GP out there anyway, that has everything all under one roof. And I don't want to spoil Derek's thunder, so I'm not going to go into too much on that, but just note that this is an end-to-end solution for the procure-to-pay side of things, and it's a great tool to assist your organization in going paperless for workflows, as well as adding in some additional securities and functionality. So with that, I will go ahead and turn it over to Derek. Derek, take it away.
Thank you, Michael. And good afternoon, everyone. Thanks,
Derek. Derek, I apologize. I forgot to mention, everyone is muted on this. So if you do have a question, please put it in the chat. I will be checking out the chat as we go along here. And we'll have time for questions at the end as well. But if you do have a question as we're going through this, please put it in the chat and we'll make sure we'll answer it. I apologize, Derek. Sorry about that.
Oh, no worries, Michael. Yeah, thank you for mentioning that. Everyone, thanks for joining this afternoon or good morning, depending upon where you're located. There will be two components to today's webinar. I'm going to start off, as you can see in a slide deck, kind of talking high level about the value proposition of our purchasing and or AP automation offering. And then I'll transition into a demonstration, so that you can see PN3 in action and determine if it could potentially provide some value to your organization. So without further delay, let's go ahead and get this afternoon's session started. We really look to accomplish three objectives for our clients. First being everything becoming digital, improving process efficiencies. And by that, we're obviously talking about the process efficiency for the accounting and finance team, but we're really talking about every department, because for most organizations, virtually every department participates in your purchasing and or AP process. The second objective is giving you the ability to configure workflows that guarantee that your policies and procedures are being adhered to at all times. So this obviously makes the accounting and finance team happy, but all the executive team as well as your organization's auditing team as well. And lastly, with everything becoming digital, you can more effectively manage the process because you always have visibility, as well as eliminating the need to maintain any paper-based filing system. We really have two offerings. We have an offering that combines our purchasing solution with AP automation. And we also, for some clients that don't offer or don't need purchasing functionality, we offer strictly our AP automation tool. And I'll cover that, the functions in that in just a second. Our purchasing solution enables organizations to generate requisitions that get routed for approval using your approval rules. Once those requisitions are fully approved, purchase orders are then generated. Our AP tool has a variety of different transaction types, vendor invoices, both PO and non-PO, expense reimbursements, reconciling staff credit card spend. If I don't have an invoice and I'm not going to get one, how do I get approval to make a payment to a vendor? The payment request form is designed for those use cases. And then lastly, there's also functionality for either uploading executed contracts to track payments against a contract, or using the PN3 workflow to route contracts for financial and legal approval. PN3 is a web application. We can deploy it in our cloud or on premises. Really depends on client requirements. There's also functionality to access PN3 via a mobile app, both for iOS and Android. You also have the ability to turn on functionality that would embed in the email alert the ability to approve or reject a transaction without having to log into PN3 to do so. For those that would like to outsource payment processing, we partner with Repay to handle payment processing as well via MasterCard, ACH, or check. We can integrate with virtually any ERP. Most of our projects are for the ERPs that you see listed here. This is where really our marketing focus is, and this is the ERPs that probably over 95% of our projects are the ERPs you see listed here. Enough of the slide deck. Let's go ahead and transition into the demonstration so I can give you a feel for the PN3 functionality. So let me come out of my slide deck, and I'm going to log into PN3. I'm going to log in here first as an AP user. You should see the PN3 login page. I'm going to log in first as Pamela Hood. We find the best way to give you a feel for the PN3 functionality is to really go through some workflow examples, try to simulate processing a transaction. In order to do that, you're going to see me log in and out as different users. I've started off as Pamela Hood, an AP user. And I'm going to kick off the session talking about the various ways that we can receive invoices into the PN3 system. And I'm going to come here to our batch capture process first and go to eCapture. eCapture is the tool that we use to ingest invoices that you're receiving via email. Most of our clients already had a dedicated AP email account when they implemented PN3, but for those that didn't, we asked them to create an AP email account within their domain. They call it Invoices at their domain, or Payables, or AP, and instruct vendors to send invoices to that AP email account in lieu of sending them in traditional mail. And most of our clients tell us that they get 70 to 80% of their invoices via email now. This eCapture tool in PN3 monitors that AP email account. And when we see an invoice come in or a message come in that maybe has a single invoice or multiple invoices attached, we grab each invoice and we ingest it into the PN3 system. So they don't have to log into their AP email account, print attachments, save attachments. PN3 pulls the invoice in. Let me just open one of the invoices. So on the right-hand side here, you'll see the invoice, and on the left are your header fields. Now you're going to notice in this case that it's already identified the vendor. It's captured the invoice number, date, and amount. That's because I had a template set up for this vendor. If I did not have a template set up, I would have to select from the drop-down the vendor, key in the invoice number, date, and amount. And if I want to use that invoice as that vendor's template, I would simply check this box, and PN3 would create a template for this vendor so that when the next invoice comes in, it knows where to go to grab invoice number, date, amount, could even grab PO number off of the vendor's invoice to eliminate that data entry step. In this example, I've also told PN3 that the invoices I'm getting from productivity are non-PO invoices and they have to be routed for approval, and I've aligned Mary Jones as the manager for this vendor. I can still come to the drop-down and select someone else if I don't want to send it to Mary, but I don't have to remember who handles this vendor. It defaults in the manager that I've aligned to this vendor productivity. There are a variety of different other workflow types and approval templates I can select, but in this case, I simply want to send the invoice to Mary, so all I do now is select Save and Upload. Off this invoice goes to Mary, and it presents the next invoice. So the invoices that have come into this table are queued up and presented to AP one at a time. Or, if you would like, you can set up automated rules where it will automatically route to the appropriate staff person. If it's an invoice that's tied to a purchase order, I can also link it to a PO to do a 2- or 3-way match. So I'm going to go and link this invoice to a PO. It pulls in the lines from the purchase order, and we can set up business rules to do a 2- or 3-way match, invoice to PO. For most of our clients, if the 2- or 3-way match passes, there's no need to route the invoice for approval, although some clients prefer to route it even if it does. But you can really process invoices here. So in this example, you see I have each of my line items. It shows me the quantity that's already been received, the quantity previously invoiced, and the quantity received and not invoiced. So I can set up, again, 2- or 3-way match rules against this purchase order. I'm going to come out of, well, actually before I come out of this, I want to talk about a couple of other things, because I mentioned that not all invoices are going to come in via email. Some are in traditional mail. So there's functionality in PN3 to scan a batch of invoices directly in, or go to a network scanner, scan there, and import a batch. We can also give you the ability to manually import credit card charges. However, for American Express and over 14,000 financial institutions, we can pull in those charges automatically. And then lastly, you can also import invoices from a spreadsheet. Now I'm going to come out of batch capture. And I'm actually going to log out as Pamela, and I'm going to log back in as Mary. Mary, if you recall, is the manager that I just routed an invoice to. So I'm going to log in here now as Mary. The invoice is in Mary's task list, the second transaction here. So Mary opens the invoice up. She can see the invoice. She can see that Pamela routed the invoice to her. This section of the page becomes your audit trail, the transaction processing milestone. So it's going to show who touched it, the action they took, and the date and time that action was taken. As a manager, Mary has the ability to approve or reject, or maybe after looking at this invoice, she says, you know, I don't really deal with this vendor. I think it was probably a mistake that Pamela sent this to me, so I'm going to send it back to her. She can select route, tell PN3 that she wants to send the invoice back to Pamela, and she can enter a note to explain, my apologies, I keep coughing here. She can enter a note here to explain why she's routing the invoice back to Pamela. I'm not going to do that because ultimately I want to approve this invoice. So I'm going to cancel this, and I'm going to come down to approve it. Now you'll notice above the approve button, it's telling me that coding is required. It's only because I checked that box in the workflow. Checking that box says that if an invoice is routed to a manager uncoded, they have to attempt to code it before they can approve it. Again, only because I turned that box on. So if it's not important in your work process to have that, just don't check that box and managers will be able to approve without coding. Or as the AP person, I could have coded the invoice before I routed it to the manager. There are 3 ways that each user can code an invoice. They can select add coding from spreadsheet and import the codes from a spreadsheet. Secondly, they can select the codes from a drop-down. In this demo example, I just have 2 segments, an account and a department. Now, you'll notice I can see multiple accounts, but I only see one department. That's because we pull into PN3 from GP or whatever ERP you're using. We pull in all of your active codes, but you have the ability within PN3 to limit the codes available to an individual user. And in this case, Mary's in the IT department, and we want her to only be able to code to that department, and so we've set that up as part of her user profile. And I can create a single line of coding or multiple lines. The third way is that each user can set up his or her own default coding with a vendor and then select Retrieve Default. Now in this example, I only have a single line, but typically when the default coding is used, there may be multiple distribution lines for a given invoice, and it pulls in each one. You notice that now the invoice is coded, so the coding required message is gone. At this point, if Mary chooses to, she can drill down to see impact on budget. It will show her her annual budget, what's committed, the balance, what's pending approval, and what her balance would be if everything pending is approved. Mary says, perfect. I am ready to approve this invoice now. One of the items we talked about was guaranteeing adherence to your policies and procedures. Here's the first example of that. I'm going to approve this as Mary. However, Mary's approval limit of $1,000 is not sufficient to fully approve this invoice. So when she selects approve, the invoice is automatically routed to her manager, Susan, instead of going to AP. Mary is then presented with the next transaction in her inbox. She happens to have an Organization American Express card, and it shows her the charges on her card. It shows the date of the charge, the supplier, and the amount. And Mary can use this form to reconcile those charges. So for example, I'm going to hit edit here. Mary says this charge was for office supplies. She then codes it. She charges it to office supplies, to her department. If she needs to split coding, this 9792 can be split across multiple lines if necessary, lines of distribution. And she can also here attach backup. I can select add, and I can hit scan or import to attach my backup. This functionality is very easily done, by the way, on the mobile app as well. So instead of browsing to my receipt, I can take a picture of the receipt. Now you'll notice here there's 2 ways that I can attach a receipt. I can browse to the file, but I also have some receipts that are already here. We train clients to email their receipts to an eReceipts email account. We segregate them by user because we know who sent the receipt in, so when they're reconciling their credit card spend or filling out their expense report, their receipts are readily accessible to them. That's just a quick overview of the credit card functionality. If anyone has any questions or need additional information, I'd be happy to provide it. What I'm going to do now, though, is I'm going to sign out as Mary, and I'm signing back in as Mary's manager, Susan. I'm doing that because Susan has the invoice that Mary just approved. It's in her inbox because it exceeded Mary's approval limit. So Susan can open up the invoice. Just like Mary, she can see the invoice. She can also see here that Mary is the one that approved it, date and time, and Mary coded the invoice. She can drill down to take a look at the coding As Mary's manager, if she chooses to edit the coding, she can. She determines that this all looks great. However, even though she's not using a PO for this vendor productivity, she is managing a contract. So she wants to link the invoice to the contract. As soon as she does that, two things will happen. The contract gets attached. She wants to see it. She simply hits view, and PN3 will present the contract. She also from here has the ability to select contract info to see the value of the contract, what's been paid, the balance, and when the contract is due to expire. She says, this looks perfect. It's exactly what I thought. And she determines that she's ready to approve the invoice as well. Her approval limit exceeds the invoice amount. Therefore, when she approves it, it will not have to route to her manager. It will route automatically back to AP. So I'm going to quickly sign out as Susan, and I'm going to sign back in as Pamela, the AP user. The invoice is now in Pamela's task list. Pamela can see the invoice. The audit trail shows her who touched it, the action they took, and the date and time that action was taken. But here in the header, she can see that the status is manager approved. Manager approved means that Pamela now has authorization to send this invoice to your ERP. To do that, all she has to do is select approve. When she does that, using GP as an example, PN3 will look into GP to see if Pamela has a batch open for the period this invoice is going to. If she does, we're going to append it to that batch immediately. If she does not, we're going to create a batch for her. In essence, what I'm saying is that Pamela will not have to open up GP to key anything in or to import from a file. The integration with PN3 will create the AP transaction immediately upon Pamela selecting approve. All right, so far we've talked about vendor invoices, a little bit about PO and non-PO invoices. We touched a little bit on reconciling credit card spend. I'm going to talk about a few more transaction types. I'm going to sign out here as Pamela, and I'm going to sign in now as Mary. One of the transaction types is the form that I mentioned earlier we call the payment request form. This form, again, is only intended to be used in cases when you want to get payment to a vendor, you don't have an invoice, you're not going to get one. Instruct staff to come into PN3, select the vendor. This drop-down list of vendors are the active vendors in your ERP. Pamela says, I need to get a payment to First Street Graphics. This is a drop-down list that we have set up in the demo, but clients create their own list of payment request types. Some of the common use cases we see for this is customer refunds, credit memos, but the most popular one is a vendor deposit. Pamela says, I need to get a deposit payment to First Street Graphics by the 29th. She then selects Add Row. She types in a description of what this deposit is for. She enters in the amount, and then she codes it. She saves this line. If she needs to create additional lines, she can. She can attach backup, and then she can route this payment request for approval. Once fully approved, just like an invoice would, it routes to AP. Again, I'm only using this form when I don't have an invoice and I'm not going to receive one. In addition to the payment request form, there is also a form for expense reimbursements. So if I have out-of-pocket expenses that I need to be reimbursed for, I can enter those expenses. I can also enter in mileage, attach my receipts and supporting documents, and once I finish filling my form out, I can route that for approval. So let me just give you a quick idea here of how this would work. Let's say Pamela says I have some April expenses, and it might be any time throughout the month. So I'm going to put in a full month date range, but it could be for a day, a week, whatever the period of time. and Pamela would select Add Expenses. She selects the day. This drop-down is a drop-down that you create. Many of our clients, the expense category maps to an account in their ERP. Mary selects airfare, tells PN3 that it's United Airlines. She codes it. Again, she can only code to her department. She saves that line. She could enter an additional line. She can hit add to attach backup. She can also enter in mileage. So if she needed to use her vehicle for travel, when she selects the date, PN3 will pull in your reimbursement rate. That's really controlled by your PN3 administrator. At this point, if you do not have turned on the MapQuest integration in PN3, users will key in the mileage. The application will multiply that times the rate to determine the amount. This demo has MapQuest integration turned on. So in order to do the calculation, I have to either type in or select from a drop-down a starting address and an ending address. PN3 will then calculate the miles, multiply it times the rate to determine the reimbursement amount. So this form is ideal for out-of-pocket expenses as well as mileage. I route this for approval once I've finished filling it out. Sometimes staff will hold on to it for a day, a week, month, whatever the period of time, and then submit their expense report when they're ready to be reimbursed. Once fully approved, it will route to AP, just like any other AP transaction. By the way, there's also functionality for routing contracts, as well as a new vendor workflow that you can set up as well. I'm going to come out as Mary. I'm going to sign in now as Pamela. Pamela, by the way, is the AP user. I want to talk for a second about reports. If you can envision the process, there are a variety of different transactions in the workflow. AP can now, because everything is more digital, can really manage that process. Hey, what are my pending liabilities? What's out there? What are we waiting for? One of the ways to do that is to open up what we call the Open Transactions Report. This report says, I'm going to pull in everything that's in PN3 that has not been fully approved and sent to your ERP. I'm going to break them up by age, 0 to 30 days old, 31 to 60, 61 to 90, and 91 and greater. But each transaction is going to show you the vendor, invoice number, date, amount, and this last column shows you whose inbox is sitting in right now. Most clients also turn on workflow rules in PN3 that if a manager sits on an invoice too long, the system will automatically start reminding that manager each day that there's an invoice in your inbox that we need you to take action on. Each report can be viewed. I can drill down to each individual transaction. I can print or export each report to Excel. I could have also, in this example, said, I don't want to see everything outstanding. Just show me what's in this user's inbox. So it allows me to really effectively manage the process. And if I want to manually put a note in to someone, I can open up the transaction and do that in PN3. And as you can see here, there's a long list of reports. PN3 also eliminates the need to maintain any paper files. I can use any of these fields to perform a search. If you have multiple companies in your ERP, I can search by company. I can search by vendor name, vendor ID. What batch is it in? What PO? If it was linked to a PO, what PO is it assigned to? Or what contract? Invoice number, date, amount. I can search on any of these fields. I can even search by, show me everything that this person approved or rejected. Show me everything coded a certain way. As you can see, there are many fields I can use to search. Probably the most common search we see is by vendor. So I'm going to tell PN3 that I want to see everything for this vendor so far in 2022. Now, depending upon who I am as a user, I may not see everything. I may not have access to everything based on how you set your security up. It's possible that I can only see transactions that are coded to my department. But when I hit search, this table is going to show me all of the transactions that met the search criteria that I entered. And I can really see the status here. I see that all but one has been AP approved. That means I know all but one is really in my ERP now. And I can see that some of them have payment pending and others have payment approved. So I know they've been paid already. Now this demo is set up to show the integration with Repay for handle payments, but if you're processing payments in your ERP, it's going to show the payment type. How was it paid? Check or ACH, payment number, payment date, as well as payment amount. But I open up an invoice, I can see the invoice. Again, I can see the audit trail. This wasn't the invoice I want from that table. I can hit next and go and take a look at the next invoice. I could come back to the table if I wanted to. If I wanted to create a spreadsheet of this table, I can click this button and it will export all of these search results to an Excel file. I also could tell PN3, you know what? I want all of these invoices into one file. If I select Generate PDF, it will compile that PDF file of all of these invoices and email the user a link to download that file. One last thing I want to cover quickly here is I want to give you a feel for the other tool just real quickly is the purchasing functionality. Again, some of our clients are using the combined solution PN3 for purchasing and payables. Others are only using our payables tool. So I don't want to spend too much time on this, but users from here can generate requisitions. They can route those requisitions for approval. You can attach supporting documents to those requisitions. And once fully approved, you can generate POs. Then you can invoice, as I showed earlier, you can invoice against those purchase orders. I'm going to come back to my slide deck here for a second. So we like to do these webinars just solely as introductions to potentially what PN3 can do. We don't take a deep dive, but for clients that would like to take a deep dive, we really want the phone lines open. So we do those sessions one-on-one so we can have a discussion in detail about your requirements, as well as demoing specific to the features and functionality that would have the most benefit to you. If from there you determine that there is a solution that could meet your needs, we would then, working with Michael, be happy to provide the proposal. My contact information and Michael's contact information is on this last slide. As Michael mentioned, we'd love to do a Q&A session now that we're wrapping up the webinar, and anything else Michael would like to provide or offer. You just want to kind of open it up to get any questions answered.
Great, thanks, Derek. Hopefully everybody can see why we were so excited about showing you the solution today. You can see it's a complete end-to-end solution here. Eric, I did have, or Derek, I'm sorry, did have a couple questions come in. Can you talk about the integration with GP? Is it a batch type thing? Do people have to, you know, save something in PN3 and then go in and import it into GP? You know, talk to that a little bit, if you will.
Sure, I'd be happy to. There's really no batch process, and you're not manually doing anything. The functionality within the PN3 system is handling that integration. So first, let's talk about what we're ingesting into PN3 from GP. We're ingesting vendor data, and that's on a schedule to come in. As you update vendor data in GP, we pull that into PN3. We're ingesting your chart of accounts data, payment data. So that's an automatic process. As you approve AP transactions or even POs in PN3, we send them automatically to GP. Now, your AP transactions obviously have to be part of an AP batch. So if that AP user has a batch open, we'll append the invoice to that batch. If they do not, we're going to create a batch. But we're not sending them from PN3 to GP as part of a batch. We're just appending to the batches that are open for that AP user.
Okay, great. So you guys are, it's a fully integrated solution there. There's no manual things that have to go on, which is great for the client, because anything that they have to touch, there's always chances that something can go wrong there. With the fully integrated solution, it's a much tighter and better solution there. Next one coming in, and we always get this one. And I don't want you to go into a ton of detail on this, because obviously it's a little bit different for everybody. But can you talk about how you price out PN3? Does everybody that would be in PN3 need a license? Do you have different levels of licensing? Just kind of give us an overview. Again, not throwing out any numbers or anything like that. Just kind of talk through how the pricing works within PN3.
Sure, I'd be happy to. The pricing methodology in PN3 is somewhat similar to GP in that it's not a named user, it's concurrent user. So we don't track every user that you can set up. We only track how many can be in at the exact same time. And there are different levels of concurrent user licensing. Now, every user in PN3 is assigned a role. Is it an AP person? Maybe an accounting manager? Is it a manager? Is it an assistant? And every role requires that a concurrent user license is available in order for them to log in, with one exception. There is an associate user role. That role limits the user to the ability to do expense reports only, and that role does not require a concurrent user license to be available in order for those users to log in. All other users do secure a license when they log in, so a concurrent user license must be available. So we help clients determine, based on their user counts and their transaction volume, which concurrent user level is best for them. But they don't have to worry about having a named license for each user. They can load as many users as they want into PN3. PN3 will simply control how many can be in at the exact same time.
And that's great for our GP clients who are familiar with that current user type licensing. So, and the last one that I have here that I see is, and this one happens to be near and dear to my heart, and something you and I have talked about a number of times over the last few months. One thing that I didn't hear you mention on the session is punch out capabilities. So can you talk what types of functionality you have there for the ability to reach out to vendors and do some punch out capability there?
Yep, yeah, we have talked about that several times, Michael. So yes, you're right. And I'm happy to say that punch out is in development right now. We're working with a major punch out supplier. The name is Supplier Solutions, that has punch out functionality with virtually every major supplier. And so we're working with their integration team to add punch out functionality to PN3, so that if you have contracts with suppliers, you can, from PN3, get to a cart in that supplier site, ingest that cart into PN3, so that you don't have to rekey any information. And that functionality should be available on June the 1st, at the latest, July the 1st of this year.
Great. We just got another one come in here. Do credit card users need licensing? I'm assuming they mean when they're going to go through and well, I guess there's two things there. One would be if they're doing expense reporting through Amex, and the other one, I guess, would be the credit card matching. So if you can kind of talk through that.
I'd be happy to. Yeah, if they're using the credit card reconciliation functionality in PN3, then yes, that user would secure a license when they log in. They would not be an associate user because we would be ingesting their credit card data, or AP would be importing it, and they would be using the PN3 credit card reconciliation form to reconcile those charges. If the credit card is going to them, it's not really a card that you're paying for under the organization, and it's really an out-of-pocket expense to them, and they're paying it outside of your AP system, then it's possible that they could be an expense reimbursement user, and they would reconcile in the expense report form. And then in that case, if their functionality is limited to the expense report functionality, they would not be a user when they log in.
Okay. And I think that's a perfect opportunity for us to have a further discussion about that and drill down into that. So if you want, please reach out to us, and we can certainly have a further discussion on that and show you some more of the capabilities around that. So, Derek, I see we're coming up about about 45 minutes in or so. Do you have any last parting words or anything like that that you wanted to let everybody know about before we wrap up here?
Thank you, Michael. I'd like to say thank you to Michael and the Paradigm team for enabling us to demonstrate PN3 for you today. And I hope that you found it informative and had some value in it. And as Michael said, if you're interested in taking a deeper dive or have questions, it's always available to assist.
All right, great. Thank you, Derek. And again, we have our information up there. If you just reach out to me, or you can even go to sales@ptcsolutions.com and say that you're interested in learning more about the PN3 solution. We can certainly set up a time to talk more and have Derek go through and do a more in-depth one-on-one discussion with you and detailed demo, with, again, surrounding more of your own requirements. So again, thank you, Derek, for your time today. Thank you for everyone who has joined us today. And if you are watching this later, as we will be posting this up to our YouTube channel, if you're watching this later, again, thank you for taking the time out of your busy day to join us and watch this. So again, thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everyone. Take care. Bye-bye.